Did you recognize the shooter?
Yes, sir.
Who was the shooter in that video?
Hakeem Robinson.
Your son, Hakeem Robinson.
Yes, sir.
What was the intent for the three of you when you were going to that apartment complex?
Kill McCormick.
In what has to be one of the most devastating family betrayals in modern criminal history, a father just stood in a Jacksonville courtroom and identified his own son as a murderer. Not just any son, but Hakeem Ksoo Robinson, one of Jacksonville's most prominent drill rappers, whose music videos have racked up millions of views. Those words came from Abdul Robinson Sr., known on the streets as Blue, the alleged founder and leader of the notorious ATK gang. This wasn't some reluctant witness being pressured by investigators. This was a father looking at surveillance footage and, without hesitation, identifying his own flesh and blood as the triggerman in a murder that shocked Jacksonville. A father who helped his son escape after the killing, only to later cut a plea deal that could send his son to prison for life without parole, all to save his own skin and spend time with his younger children. But here's where this story gets even more twisted. This wasn't Abdul Robinson Sr.'s first rodeo with cooperating against his own family. He's done this before, and this case reveals a pattern of behavior that rapper Boosie Badazz himself called out as one of the most despicable acts a father could commit. Let's break down the backdrop to this courtroom drama. Jacksonville's deadly drill rap beef, a violent feud between rival gangs ATK Ace's Top Killers and KTA Kill Them All, also known as 6 Block. This isn't just about music. This is about a cycle of retaliation that has claimed over a dozen lives, with each side releasing diss tracks that mock their deceased rivals by name, reference graphic details of their demise, and turn real tragedy into viral content. Songs like Who I Smoke and When I See You have collectively amassed tens of millions of views, with lyrics that prosecutors have used as evidence in multiple murder trials. The victim in this particular case, Lil Buck, made a fatal mistake. He released a diss track mocking the death of Ksoo's half-brother, Willie Boss Goon Addison, who had been gunned down exactly 1 year earlier in a drive-by shooting that also left Ksoo's brother, Abdul Robinson Jr., wounded. According to prosecutors and witness testimony, that song sealed Lil Buck's fate. It was a direct provocation that demanded a response to maintain respect in the gang and rap communities. Let's break down exactly what happened on that fateful morning of January 15, 2020. Lil Buck, just 23 years old, had gone to a staffing agency at Dames Point Plaza on Merrill Road to pick up a job assignment. He was trying to make an honest living, completely unaware that he'd been stalked for hours by 3 individuals: Ksoo, his cousin Leroy, ATK Scotty Whitaker, and the getaway driver Dominique Butta Barner. Barner, who would later flip and become the state's star witness under a plea deal that reduced his potential life sentence to just 20 years, testified in excruciating detail about how they found Lil Buck's address through the Duval County Clerk's public website, waited outside his apartment in a stolen silver Nissan Altima for hours, and followed him to the plaza. The plan was cold and calculated, an ambush. They would wait for Lil Buck to get into his vehicle, then jump out and end his life right there. But things didn't go according to plan. According to witness testimony, Lil Buck noticed someone approaching suspiciously and started running. What followed was a chase across the parking lot that was captured on dashcam footage, a masked gunman in all black pursuing his victim, catching up to him, and firing multiple shots. An off-duty Jacksonville Sheriff's Office officer witnessed the entire incident and immediately pursued the getaway vehicle. The chase ended when the Nissan crashed near Townsend Boulevard, and 3 suspects fled on foot, leaving behind crucial evidence: firearms in the vehicle, including a rifle with Ksoo's fingerprint, and a t-shirt containing his hair. But the chaos didn't end there. Approximately 8 minutes after the crash, 2 of the suspects invaded a nearby home in the Arlington area. They held down a female homeowner, causing injuries, and stole her cell phone and her husband's clothes to change out of their bloodied or identifiable attire. The homeowner later identified one of the intruders by a distinctive tattoo 1993 on his arm, matching Barner's birth year. And who came to pick them up? None other than Abdul Robinson Sr., Ksoo's father. Driving a red or orange Dodge Charger, he helped his son and the others escape, fully aware of what had just transpired. According to his own interrogation video, Barner and Whitaker told him everything, how they crashed the car,
let's talk about what
how
makes this
Ksoo
case
had jumped out and run a
particularly
different
damning
way,
for Ksoo.
and crucially, that
and days
Ksoo had
following
taken a
Lil
gun
Buck's
with him
murder,
while leaving
Ksoo
another
posted
firearm
mocking
behind. Content on Instagram. One post showed a video of Lil Buck rapping, captioned, "Bye bye," with waving emojis. Another showed Ksoo getting a pedicure with the caption, "Kill a guy, then go get my toes done," a brazen display of what prosecutors argued was him taunting his victim's memory. Abdul Robinson Sr. himself testified that he was concerned about these posts and told Ksoo to remove them, believing they referenced the crime, but by then, the damage was done. Screenshots had already circulated, and investigators had taken notice. The trial that began in late July 2025 was unlike any Jacksonville had seen. Two juries had to be seated, one for Ksoo and another for his co-defendant and cousin, ATK Scotty, because their defenses were fundamentally at odds with each other. Ksoo's attorney, Tara Kawas, would argue that her client wasn't even the shooter, while Scotty's team would concede someone was guilty but insist it wasn't their client. The prosecution, led by Assistant State Attorney Joel Cooper Jr., presented their case as a puzzle where every piece would eventually reveal a complete picture of Ksoo's guilt. They had forensic evidence, witness testimony, digital footprints, and perhaps most devastatingly, they had Ksoo's own father ready to testify against him. But Ksoo's defense team wasn't going down without a fight. In what can only be described as a bold and risky strategy, Kawas had Ksoo stand in court for several minutes during her opening statement, forcing the jury to look at him, all 6 feet plus of him, his heavy-set frame, his distinctive build, and then compare that to the masked figure in the surveillance footage.
This is the first opportunity that I have had to speak with you directly. So I wanted to take this opportunity to reintroduce myself to you. My name is Tara Kawas, and I, along with Christopher DeCos, we have the honor and privilege of representing Hakeem Robinson.
Her argument was simple but powerful. The prosecution was asking the jury to not believe their eyes. Multiple eyewitnesses, both civilians and trained police officers, had described the shooter as between 5 feet 5 and 5 feet 11, slim or slender build. One witness at the scene estimated 160 to 170 pounds. Ksoo was clearly taller and heavier than those descriptions.
This, members of the jury, is Hakeem Robinson. Stand up, Hakeem. He is a young, aspiring, talented musician who 5 years ago was wrenched from his family, his life, and his promising career. All because the government refused to look at literally what is right in front of them.
The defense hammered this point relentlessly. They pointed out that Officer Christopher Collins, a 20% veteran who witnessed the shooting, initially described the shooter as 5 feet 8 to 5 feet 10 shorter than Ksoo. When Collins later revised his estimate after reviewing video evidence, the defense pounced, suggesting he'd been influenced by learning who the suspect was. But the prosecution had its own trump card: forensic video analysis. Expert Jason Latham used 3D laser scans, kinematic models, and body morphology analysis to compare the masked shooter to the suspects. His conclusion? He could definitively exclude Barner and Scotty as the shooter based on height and stride length discrepancies, but he could not exclude Ksoo. According to his analysis, only Ksoo's height, over 6 feet, build, and gait matched the shooter. The defense labeled this junk science and a modern-day smokescreen, arguing it was unreliable and insufficient for proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They pointed out that no DNA directly linked Ksoo to pulling the trigger, no murder weapon was recovered, and the masked figure's face was never visible. But then came the moment everyone was waiting for: Abdul Robinson Sr. taking the stand on the 28th of July 2025. The courtroom was tense. This wasn't just another witness, this was a father about to potentially send his son to prison for life. Abdul Robinson Sr., looking visibly emotional, paused for a long time before answering when asked if he recognized the shooter. He appeared to hold back tears. Then he said it.
Did you recognize the shooter?
Yes, sir.
Who was the shooter in that video?
Hakeem Robinson.
Your son, Hakeem Robinson.
Yes, sir.
The testimony was crushing. Robinson Sr. explained that he recognized his son based on knowing his kids, his height, his build, how he moved, even details like seeing Ksoo wear hoodies pulled up over his dreads, similar to what the shooter wore. He testified that he'd seen Ksoo with shoes that appeared to be the same as what the shooter was wearing. But perhaps the most damning part of his testimony involved a gun. Robinson Sr. revealed that he'd been present when Ksoo filmed a music video called Bang It Out, where Ksoo held two firearms, a Draco and a short black firearm. The short black firearm, according to Robinson Sr., looked like the same weapon used in the dashcam footage of Lil Buck's murder. And here's the kicker. After the murder, Robinson Sr. testified that he never saw Ksoo with that short black firearm again, though he still saw him with the Draco. The defense tried to paint Robinson Sr. as self-serving during cross-examination. He admitted that his primary goal in cooperating was self-protection. But his story was consistent with what he'd told police years earlier in that interrogation video. Why would a father do this? Robinson Sr. provided his explanation, and it was heartbreaking in its own twisted way. He revealed he has 11 children total but has only lived with 4 of them, including Ksoo and Abdul Jr. He testified about severe health issues discovered in June 2025: diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, and failing kidneys. He spoke about wanting to attend a daddy-daughter dance with his 8-year-old daughter and play football with his 6-year-old twins. The plea deal he'd accepted reduced his potential 60-year sentence to just 76 months for accessory charges. He called it the hardest decision of his life, but ultimately, he chose his freedom and his younger children over protecting his sons, who were old enough to face the consequences of their actions. The other star witness, Dominique Barner, faced even more intense scrutiny. The defense made sure the jury understood that Barner was a paid assassin with a history of lying to police, in depositions, and even under oath in previous proceedings. He'd been caught red-handed within 24 hours of the murder and initially denied everything.
And they both argued that Dominique Barner, the witness, was motivated by a plea deal he had with the state to testify against Hakeem Robinson and Leroy Whitaker Jr.
But when Barner realized investigators believed Ksoo was the shooter, he pounced on the opportunity, seeing it as his ticket to avoid dying in prison. His deal meant facing a maximum of 20 years instead of mandatory life without parole, and he'd already served 5 years, meaning he could potentially be free in just 15 more.
If you testify that it was not Hakeem Robinson that was the shooter, you don't get the deal. If you say it was someone else, you don't get a deal. Right?
Right.
The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal and effective at highlighting Barner's motivations. But here's the thing. Barner's testimony wasn't the only evidence. It was corroborated by physical evidence like the fingerprint and hair, by the Instagram posts, by the forensic analysis, and crucially, by Ksoo's own father's identification. One particularly shocking revelation came when the defense challenged Barner about a phone call Ksoo allegedly made to Raekwon Howard, a member of the rival 6 Block gang, bragging about being outside and about to handle business. The defense pounced on this detail because Barner had never mentioned it in 3 separate depositions, totaling over 9 hours of questioning. It only came up for the first time during trial preparation, a major credibility blow.
Did you testify on direct that you witnessed a phone call between Raekwon Howard and Dominique Barner? When Mr. Cooper was asking you questions, right?
Yeah.
He asked you, did you see Hakeem Robinson make a phone call to Raekwon Howard while you guys were in the parking lot?
Correct.
And you said yes, right?
Right.
Now, in this case, you sat just for us 3 separate depositions, right?
Right.
And these depositions weren't short, were they?
No.
You were deposed by all of the attorneys for over 9 hours, right?
I don't know the exact hours.
But it was on 3 separate occasions,
Right.
and we had to actually break it up into 3 because each day we went till 5, right? And we ran out of time.
Right.
Each attorney for each defendant painstakingly went through very detailed questions, right? Step by step about what happened, right?
Right.
And you never once mentioned in any one of those depositions to any of us in the presence of Joel Cooper that you saw a call from Raekwon Howard on Hakeem Robinson's phone. Did you?
But the prosecution had an answer for every defense challenge. They brought in DNA experts who matched Barner's DNA to the victim's pajama top where he'd grabbed her during the home invasion, and Whitaker's DNA to the pajama bottoms. The statistical probability? Greater than 700 billion times more likely that those DNA profiles came from Barner and Whitaker than from random individuals.
So the likelihood ratio is a statistical calculation that compares two opposing explanations to the same event. So the event being a mixed DNA profile of 2 individuals was observed on the pajama top. The first explanation is that DNA profile originated from Barbara Buckley and Dominic Barner. And the second explanation is that DNA profile originated from Barbara Buckley and an unknown individual. The first explanation is greater than 700 billion times more likely than the other explanation. That is what likelihood ratio is about.
The defense tried to challenge the DNA evidence, pointing out that DNA can degrade, be wiped away, or transferred innocently. They emphasized that Ksoo's DNA on items in the car only proved he'd been in that car at some point, not necessarily on the day of the murder. After all, the car had been reported stolen for 2 months, and Ksoo, Scotty, and their associates had been in and out of that car during that time. After days of testimony, hundreds of pieces of evidence, and arguments that laid bare the brutal reality of Jacksonville's gang violence, both juries retired to deliberate. The question wasn't just about legal guilt, it was about whether a son could be convicted largely on his father's testimony, and whether the physical evidence truly proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Ksoo was the masked shooter. The defense's closing argument hammered on reasonable doubt. They reminded jurors that Ksoo's appearance simply didn't match the descriptions given by multiple witnesses. They emphasized that the prosecution's case relied heavily on witnesses who'd been bought with the promise of freedom, Barner with his plea deal and Abdul Robinson Sr. with his reduced sentence.
This man was caught red-handed within 24 hours of the murder of Charles McCormick. And months go by of him denying his involvement. And when he realized that who they thought the shooter was, Hakeem Robinson, he pounced on it. He was like, this is how I'm going to get out of here. He decided he was going to lie to the government to get what he wanted, which is the hope of freedom.
But the prosecution's closing was equally powerful. They reminded jurors that circumstantial evidence can be stronger than direct evidence when multiple pieces fit together. They had Ksoo's fingerprint on a rifle, his hair on a t-shirt, his mocking social media posts, his father's identification, Barner's detailed testimony, and the forensic analysis, all pointing in one direction. On the 31st of July 2025, both juries returned their verdicts. First, around noon, Whitaker's jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. Then, around 4 p.m., after approximately 3.5 to 4 hours of deliberation, Ksoo's jury delivered their verdict.
In the circuit of the 4th Judicial Circuit in and for Duval County, Florida, case number 16, 2020, CF 3601B, Division CRE. State of Florida versus Hakeem Robinson, verdict as to count 1, we the jury found the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. So say we all, done, Jacksonville, Duval County, Florida, signed by the foreperson on July 31st, 2025.
Guilty of first-degree murder. The verdict sheet was signed. The jurors were polled one by one to confirm it was their true verdict, and just like that, Ksoo's fate was sealed. State Attorney Melissa Nelson praised the verdict, emphasizing accountability for gang violence. Meanwhile, Ksoo's family declined to comment, and Whitaker's father expressed deep emotional distress. Ksoo's immediate reaction? He shook his head in disbelief and glanced at family members in the courtroom. But notably, he did not break down or show excessive emotion, a stoic response that many observers on social media found telling, suggesting either acceptance of his fate or perhaps shock that his own father's testimony had actually worked against him. But Ksoo didn't stay silent for long. In a statement posted from jail, he blasted the proceedings, alleging corruption and questioning the trial's fairness. He specifically called out what he described as an all-white jury with 3 white state attorneys, claiming black jurors had been systematically removed and suggesting the outcome was predetermined by racial bias rather than evidence. The composition of his jury, 7 women and 5 men, became a focal point of his post-trial complaints, though no official records confirm the racial breakdown he alleged. What is confirmed is that both defendants now face mandatory life in prison without the possibility of parole, with sentencing scheduled for the 8th of September 2025. But here's where this story gets even more complicated. Ksoo still has another murder trial looming. He's charged with the 2019 killing of 16-year-old Adrian "Bibby" Gaynor Jr., yet another KTA-affiliated rapper and close friend of the late Julio Fulio. That trial is expected to begin after his sentencing in the Lil Buck case, meaning Ksoo could potentially face another life sentence. And remember who's expected to testify in that trial too? His father. The broader hip-hop community has been divided in its reaction to the verdict and to Abdul Robinson Sr.'s testimony. Rapper Boosie Badazz went viral with his passionate condemnation of the father's cooperation, calling it one of the most despicable acts imaginable.
This is a very dicey kind of situation. You're completely against it, though.
Yeah.
So if your own child came to you and said, "Dad, I just killed somebody. I need you to help me."
You gotta understand, Ksoo dad been killing. Like, this nigga been like that. You ain't with this nigga wasn't working at no car shop.
Boosie's argument was that a real father would face the consequences rather than flip on his son, regardless of the potential prison time. He emphasized that parents have a responsibility to their children that transcends legal deals and self-preservation. He even said he'd write Abdul Robinson Sr. in prison to try to convince him of the error of his ways, though whether that letter was ever sent remains unknown.
Right now, we're making that motherfucker turn on his own seed. He's turning on his own boy. Then they're gonna kill his ass when he go back there and we let him out. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make him testify and let his ass out after and give him credit for time served and let Ksoo boy smoke his ass. 2 birds and 1 stone.
But others pointed out the complexity of the situation. Abdul Robinson Sr. is allegedly the founder of ATK, a man who'd been involved in street life himself and faced the very real possibility of dying in prison if he didn't cooperate. He has younger children who need him and severe health issues that make his mortality feel immediate rather than abstract. Some argued that he was teaching his sons accountability, that actions have consequences, and that even family can't shield you from the results of your choices. Others saw it as pure selfishness, a man prioritizing his own survival over the loyalty expected in both family bonds and street code. The reactions on social media captured this divide perfectly. Posts ranged from, "Imagine the betrayal," and "If my dad did this, I'd cry on the spot," to more nuanced takes about fathers being torn between fatherhood and justice, and the impossibility of the position Robinson Sr. found himself in. What's perhaps most tragic about this entire saga is how it reflects the devastating cycle of violence that has consumed Jacksonville's drill rap scene. The feud between ATK and KTA, divided by 6 Block, has claimed over a dozen lives, including Willie Boss Goon, Addison Ksoo's half-brother, in 2019, Adrian "Bibby" Gaynor Jr., allegedly by Ksoo, Charles "Lil Buck" McCormick Jr., the case we've been discussing, Julio himself in June 2024, ambushed at a Tampa hotel during his birthday celebration. The violence has spawned diss tracks that have gained tens of millions of views, turning real tragedy into entertainment. Songs like Who I Smoke by ATK members featuring Spinna Benz, Wappa Wit Da Choppa, Yungeen Ace, and Fast Money Goon explicitly mock the deaths of Bibby, Lil Buck, and 23. With lyrics like Who I Smoke, Bibby, set to an upbeat Vanessa Carlton sample. The video features dancers at grave sites, a level of disrespect that re-traumatized victims' families and provided investigators with evidence. KTA responded with their own tracks. Julio's When I See You mocked the 2018 ambush that killed Yungeen Ace's brother and associates, with lyrics like Went out to eat on his birthday, 4 shot 3 dead. Smokin' 23 and direct taunts at Ksoo. Blue telling in that jam, I swear they need to free that man Ksoo so he could catch a headshot. That track alone has over 23 million views.
Then is that what dirt be? What's for pro? That's AT. Stupid ass nigga. You better get caught slipping on that block, boy. Yeah, we waiting on you to slip. On 24! Ksoo on the drill, take off his neck. Boy, you better not try to run, we chase or leave you stretch.
Prosecutors have noted that these tracks often contain details only perpetrators would know, making them valuable investigative tools. But they've also created a toxic cycle where each killing is commemorated in music, which prompts retaliation, which gets commemorated in more music, perpetuating an endless loop of violence and grief. Bibby's father spoke about the pain of seeing his son's death mocked in viral videos, and how it felt like reliving the trauma every time a new track dropped. Mothers of other victims have expressed similar anguish, watching their children's deaths become punchlines in songs that teenagers dance to on TikTok.
Well, it was all over the music in Jacksonville. He made flyers and all this other crap. So it was like a lot of sleepless nights, and then being around people that actually know this little dude, know my son and know Ksoo them and all the other crap. I don't know who did what. I don't know what the problem is. The only thing was it's like, shit. I don't know if I need to keep a gun with me. Shit, I started with a bulletproof vest to the interview. You hear me? I ain't lying.
What's even more disturbing is how this violence has been glamorized by some corners of the internet. Ksoo had signed a record deal with a $40,000 advance just 4 days before Lil Buck's murder. He was making it, he was leaving the streets behind, he had a legitimate path forward. But the pull of the feud, the need to respond to disrespect, the code that demanded retaliation for his brother's death, all of it dragged him back into violence that has now cost him his freedom. His music videos, which once seemed like artistic expression, have become evidence in multiple murder trials. Clips from Bing It Out, showing him with the AR-style pistol that matched the murder weapon, posts showing him with Yungeen Ace outside flashing guns and gang signs, all of it has been used against him.
And I'm outside. Hey, I'm in North Carolina. Face go. So what? Ksoo make your face go. Hey, that nigga say, niggas say they outside. Hit that bit outside. Hit that bit one time. Do that one shit. Hit that.
And now, as Ksoo sits in a cell, awaiting sentencing that will almost certainly result in life without parole. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.